The Union stands as a powerful emblem. We, the younger generation, ought to draw inspiration from this moment, coming together to transform the idea of integration into something tangible. The days when Washington and Paris could dictate the course of Africa's future are now behind us. For countless years, the United States and its European partners molded the destiny of this immense continent, seizing its gold, uranium, and oil, crafting its policies, and stationing armies as if Africa existed solely for the strategies of global superpowers. Yet now, in the very heart of the Sahel, a new voice has emerged. Within Burkina Faso, President Ibrahim Traore does not request liberation, he claims it, forging a path forward on his country's own terms. From sun-baked border villages to the lively avenues of busy cities, a wave of transformation sweeps through Africa. Familiar arrangements are being discarded. Foreign military installations are shutting their doors. Those who were once expected to submit now stand upright, insisting that Africa's riches benefit Africa's people. This movement is not simply a matter of politics. It is history unfolding before us. The question that faces America is straightforward. Will we acknowledge this awakening and respond with sincerity, or will we attempt to stifle it before it matures? If you sense that this represents a pivotal shift for the continent, if you recognize the importance of African stories such as this, be sure to subscribe and accompany me on this journey through the events in Burkina Faso. This is the story of Ibrahim Traore and a struggle for dignity that may very well reshape the world. For generations, the arrangement was unmistakable. Africa would supply the resources, while the West would claim the rewards. From the gold mines of Burkina Faso to Niger's uranium fields. From the sprawling oil reserves of Nigeria, untold billions of dollars in wealth streamed northward year after year. In return, promises were made. Roads, schools, and hospitals would be built. Yet reality painted a starkly different picture. In several nations across the Sahel, well over 60% of rural roads remain unpaved, and essential services are still unavailable to millions. Western military forces were introduced under the guise of protection from extremist threats. France initiated Operation Barkhane in 2014, while the United States expanded its network of drone bases and elite units. Nevertheless, by 2022, the number of terrorist attacks in the region had surged, driving more than 2 million people from their homes in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Rather than safety, these countries found themselves trapped in dependence on foreign troops and external assistance. This was the system President Ibrahim Traoré faced when he came to power in Burkina Faso in 2022. Refusing to accept the established order, he acted swiftly to dismantle it. At the start of 2023, Traoré commanded the departure of French forces, stating, "You did not shield us from terrorism, so we shall defend ourselves." This audacious move reverberated across Africa and far beyond its borders. Mali and Niger soon made similar choices, establishing the Alliance of Sahel States, known as AES, a coalition founded on collective defense and shared political resolve. At its heart, AES rejects the notion that African countries must rely on Washington, Paris, or Brussels for their very existence. Alliances quickly shifted. No longer seeking validation from Western governments, Burkina Faso turned toward Moscow, pursuing military instruction, weaponry, and strategic partnership. To Traore and his counterparts, Russia was not there to dictate, but rather to equip them for true independence. Still, this was merely the visible side of a much deeper transformation, one destined to shake Africa's core and challenge the West, particularly the United States, with a new reality. By the middle of 2023, the streets of Ouagadougou, Bamako, and Niamey were anything but silent. Tens of thousands of citizens flooded into public plazas, brandishing national banners and calling out the names of their leaders, Ibrahim Traore, Assimi Goïta, and Abdourahmane Tiani. The atmosphere pulsed with excitement. For the first time in decades, people sensed their leaders' voices echoed their own hopes rather than serving distant powers. In Burkina Faso, where nearly 1/2 of the population is under the age of 18, these gatherings radiated the spirit of a generation raised beneath persistent foreign sway, yet now yearning for a genuinely sovereign tomorrow. Farmers hailing from far-flung villages stood shoulder to shoulder with university students from the bustling capital. Women's cooperatives proudly waved banners proclaiming, "Our gold belongs to our children, not to France." The imagery resonated with extraordinary force. In the Sahel, a territory where, according to the United Nations, more than 10,000 lives have been lost to conflict within a mere 3 years, people cast aside apprehension, daring to voice their support in broad daylight. Across Africa, news broadcasters delivered live coverage of these demonstrations, describing them as the very pulse of a movement rooted in dignity and the pursuit of autonomy. When Ibrahim Traore ascended the platform at one such gathering, his words electrified the crowd. Independence is not a promise for tomorrow, not for a decade from now. It is for this very moment. The multitude erupted, their cries reverberating through streets once reserved for military marches beneath foreign banners. In that instant, the Sahel transcended its label as a region in turmoil. It became the fulcrum of Africa's campaign for self-governance. This transformation did not pass unnoticed in Washington, Paris, or Brussels. Briefings circulated among Western intelligence agencies, highlighting a seismic realignment within the Sahel, with Burkina Faso at its heart. Diplomats cautioned that the coalition of Sahelian states might erode NATO's sway in Africa and pave the way for deeper Russian and Chinese influence. Retaliation was swift. Economic sanctions descended, cutting off access to global financing and freezing government-held assets overseas. Senior officials from the Alliance of Sahel States found themselves subject to travel restrictions. International development assistance, long contingent on political acquiescence, was withheld or redirected. For nations such as Burkina Faso, where agriculture still represents over 30% of economic output, these tactics were intended to coerce leadership back into line. In Paris, policymakers voiced regret over the forfeiture of military bases that had underpinned operations throughout West Africa. Meanwhile, lawmakers in Washington convened hearings, questioning how American authority had slipped so rapidly in a region once considered stable. Yet the response from the Sahel was one of unwavering resolve. Speaking to the press, Ibrahim Traoré declared, "We shall never barter our freedom for sustenance, nor exchange sovereignty for charity." For countless Africans and their descendants across the globe, this marked a pivotal juncture, a threshold that could not be crossed in reverse. As the West observed, the Sahel ascended, and the contours of power in Africa shifted for all to witness. Within Burkina Faso, the repercussions of President Ibrahim Traoré's bold measures rippled through every segment of society. By reclaiming authority over gold mines and curtailing foreign business concessions, the administration redirected newfound revenues toward domestic needs. Within a single year, official records documented a 15% rise in funding allotted to rural development initiatives. Villages long denied dependable electricity began to receive solar power installations. In the northern reaches, where terror groups had previously restricted access, schools in towns such as Djibo and Arbinda welcomed thousands of children back into classrooms. With security forces liberated from external oversight, coordinated campaigns drove armed militants from several crucial provinces. In the year 2023 alone, Burkina Faso's military reported regaining control of more than 300 villages from extremist factions. Farmers returned to till fields that had lain fallow. Local marketplaces, once silenced by violence, reopened their doors. The mood on the streets began to change. Through interviews aired on African news stations, small business proprietors voiced cautious hope. "Previously, we awaited directives from Harris," explained one shop owner. "Now we chart our own course. We have a leader who stands beside us." Still, obstacles persisted. Inflation climbed as sanctions took effect. Imported merchandise grew scarce. Yet Traoré's government championed self-sufficiency, promoting domestic food production, supporting small-scale manufacturing, and investing in vocational education for the younger generation. The message resounded clearly: the sovereignty of Burkina Faso would not be surrendered for fleeting relief. Beyond its frontiers, the unwavering posture of Burkina Faso sent shockwaves throughout West and Central Africa. The Sahel States Alliance, bringing together Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, solidified their unity through a collective defense agreement. An assault on any single member would be treated as an act of aggression against the entire alliance. Joint military exercises became routine, while new intelligence sharing systems were set up to monitor and counter threats moving across borders. Regional analysts observed measurable progress as a result of this cooperation. In Mali, operations backed by the Sahel States Alliance led to a noticeable decline in militant incidents across various northern regions. In Niger, authorities reported halting several arms convoys before they could supply insurgent forces. These achievements fueled a growing belief that the continent was capable of ensuring its own security, independent of Western intervention. Politically, the success of the alliance sparked spirited debates in neighboring countries such as Chad, Guinea, and even Senegal. Citizens there began to openly question whether agreements with foreign militaries truly benefited their sovereign interests. Africa News dedicated significant coverage to these conversations, showcasing surveys that revealed increasing support for strategies inspired by Ibrahim Traore and Burkina Faso. Nevertheless, the alliance was not without its challenges. Western nations intensified efforts to diplomatically sideline the Sahel States Alliance, barring its members from participating in regional economic summits and postponing critical infrastructure investments. Some African officials, fearing the loss of financial aid or trade opportunities, chose to distance their nations from the group. Yet the core principle echoed powerfully. Africa's independence was a cause worth championing, no matter the sacrifice. For Ibrahim Traoré, this period transformed him from a national figure into a symbol for the entire region. In broadcasts heard across the continent, he reminded listeners, "We are not only fighting for Burkina Faso, we are striving for every African child's right to grow up free from foreign domination." From the perspective of Washington, the ascent of leaders like Ibrahim Traoré and the assertiveness of Burkina Faso signaled a worrisome shift from long-standing patterns. During the administration of former President Donald Trump, American policy regarding Africa was shaped by the dual focus of economic opportunity and combating terrorism. Trump frequently lauded Africa's remarkable business promise, pointing out that 6 of the globe's 10 fastest expanding economies were African. However, his government also maintained unwavering partnerships with established Western allies on the continent, choosing stability over bold transformation. When Traoré ousted French forces and sought military assistance from Russia, it sounded an alarm for American officials. Confidential reports, later summarized in congressional briefings, painted the Sahel as a region of high strategic risk and warned that American counterterrorism operations might be disrupted. United States corporations, particularly those in mining and energy, faced unpredictability as new rules regarding resource management emerged in Burkina Faso and Niger. Under the next American administration, the approach quickly shifted from watchful patience to direct action. Sanctions were enacted in coordination with European allies, travel bans were imposed on officials from the Sahel States Alliance, and certain United States-sponsored development projects in Burkina Faso were put on hold. The State Department publicly reinforced its commitment to democracy and human rights. Meanwhile, many African political commentators saw these pronouncements as echoes of previous attempts to coerce independent leaders back into alignment with Western interests. On Africa News, experts debated whether the United States could adjust to Africa's evolving balance of power or if it would persist with its traditional influence. Some claimed that Washington risked driving away a generation of African leaders and citizens who no longer considered partnership with the West as inevitable. As Washington deliberated its next steps, other major powers acted decisively. Russia deepened its involvement across the Sahel, delivering military equipment, training, and strategic advisors to members of the Sahel States Alliance. Statements of foreign ministry portrayed the relationship as a partnership of equals, a phrase that struck a powerful chord in nations long used to lopsided agreements. The European Union, on the other hand, stood divided. France, having recently lost its military footholds in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger, advocated for a hardline approach, sanctions, diplomatic isolation, and coordinated pressure through regional bodies such as ECOWAS. Other members of the bloc, including Germany and Italy, argued for a more pragmatic approach, warning that severing dialogue would only push the Sahel deeper into Moscow's embrace. Within the African Union, debates grew more pointed. Several countries applauded Ibrahim Traoré's bold stance, heralding it as an example of resistance against neo-colonialism. Others voiced concerns that the policies of the Alliance of Sahel States could invite greater instability and economic difficulty. Yet even those who criticized acknowledged that the Sahel's daring moves had set off new conversations about sovereignty and self-determination far beyond its borders. African News reported that, in surveys conducted in the closing months of 2023, more than 65% of respondents in West Africa expressed positive views about the Alliance of Sahel States. A majority said they trusted leaders such as Traoré more than politicians backed by foreign interests. In this turbulent environment, one question overshadowed all others. Would the world accept a Sahel region charting its own course, or would the established powers try to force a return to the old order? In the final weeks of 2023, while Western capitals were still adjusting their strategies, the leaders of Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger made an unexpected declaration. The Alliance of Sahel States had formalized a mutual defense treaty. Under this agreement, an attack on one country would be considered an attack on all. The symbolism was unmistakable. For decades, mutual defense agreements in Africa had typically been orchestrated or heavily influenced by foreign powers. This time, there were no Western intermediaries, no oversight from NATO, and no command from France. The Sahelian leaders alone had written the pact, prioritizing their own interests. Within a matter of weeks, joint military drills began along the frontier between Burkina Faso and Mali. Troops from the alliance showcased newly acquired drones, armored vehicles, and surveillance equipment supplied by Russia. Observers noted that the exercises included both conventional battlefield tactics and strategies for fighting insurgents, underlining the alliance's readiness to face any threat, whether from militant groups or outside intervention. Africa News emphasized that the treaty signaled more than just military preparedness. It was a political declaration. The Sahel was ready to defend its sovereignty as a united front, even if it meant risking confrontation with larger powers. Analysts cautioned that this was a point of no return for Washington and Paris. For many in Burkina Faso, the announcement stirred a wave of pride. "We are no longer alone," a young soldier told journalists. "We have brothers in Mali and Niger who will stand by us until the very end." While the Defense Pact was a calculated strategic step, its greatest impact was arguably symbolic. In the span of a single night, images of Ibrahim Traoré began to appear on murals, posters, and across social media throughout Africa and its diaspora. His speeches, particularly the phrase, "We did not seek permission to be free, we rose up and claimed it," were remixed into songs, quoted at rallies, and recited in classrooms. In markets from Dakar to Lagos, vendors sold T-shirts emblazoned with his silhouette and the words, "Sovereignty Now." Across Europe's African communities, from Paris to Berlin, Traoré became central to discussions about migration, identity, and the colonial legacy. African News reported that, following the treaty's announcement, online searches for Burkina Faso and Ibrahim Traoré surged by more than 70%. Even those who remained skeptical agreed that Traoré had accomplished something remarkable, turning what began as a national cause into a movement spanning the continent. Some compared him to Thomas Sankara, Burkina Faso's revolutionary leader from the 1980s, while others saw him as part of a new generation of African leaders, unafraid to challenge the global status quo. For the Sahel, this turning point was not merely political, it resonated on cultural, emotional, and profoundly personal levels. The people viewed Traoré as more than a president. To them, he embodied the belief that Africa held the power to shape its own fate. In that light, the change became unmistakable. The struggle for self-determination had moved beyond the confines of official chambers and military compounds. Now it raged within the hearts and minds of countless men and women. From the sun-baked dunes of the Sahel to the shores washed by the Atlantic, a subtle yet unstoppable wave of transformation has begun to sweep across the land. Burkina Faso, once dismissed as just another piece in the vast chessboard of international politics, now shines as a guiding light, proving what steadfastness and bravery can bring to life. With Ibrahim Traore at the helm, communities have been reclaimed, schools have welcomed children once more, and the vision of genuine independence is no longer a faint memory. It feels as close as the dawn. Still, this path demands sacrifice. Sanctions inflict pain, adversaries gather, and the peril of unrest always looms near. Yet the people remain resolute, for they know that true freedom is worth more than comfort easily purchased. As Africa News continues to record this unfolding story, the greater question echoes far beyond the Sahel. Will this spark ignite across the continent, or will those who tremble at its brilliance succeed in extinguishing it? As Traoré himself proclaimed, we never waited for approval to claim our liberty. We rose and seized it with our own hands. If the spirit of Ibrahim Traoré has stirred something within you, help spread this narrative. Subscribe to witness the rise of an Africa that will never submit again. May God bless Africa.